Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. Week 7 Power Rankings. Find the whole list down in the description or in the newsletter link, which will also have the injury cheat sheet, the pickups, and the plays for Monday Night Football. Smash the like, sub to the channel. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com is on the line with me. Sir, I have an update to my Tier 1 of the NFL Power Rankings.
Oh, did you slide somebody into the Tier 1 with the Chiefs?
I did slide someone into the Tier 1 with the Chiefs. How about that?
Is it somebody I've been begging you to slide into Tier 1 of the Chiefs?
It's not Houston, if that's what you're asking.
No, the Vikings.
It's Baltimore.
Ah. Well, I just have a bigger Tier 1 than you. I still have Baltimore in there, too.
Yeah, so I have Kansas City. Baltimore moves from 4 to 2. A very impressive win. Shutting is more defensively, if anything else.
Yes.
Obviously, Washington went out of its way to take away Lamar's ability to run in that game. And they were like, hey, St. Juste, why don't you go one-on-one with Zay Flowers? See how that turns out. I actually feel really bad for St. Juste because, listen, he's not a primary cornerback. He's not... when asked to play the role of a Surtain or a Sauce Gardner or whoever it might be, like, hey, that lockdown corner, that he is not. I'm sure he would be a very capable, maybe low-end number 2 corner or really good number 3, but he is just miscast in the role that they have. I mean, this is where you're going to get Washington every week. Just pick on the guy who St. Juste is on and just throw to him over and over.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's the big problem, too, with the Giants secondary is that Deonte Banks is nice, and he's a really good number 2, but he's not a number 1. Asking to be the number 1 is why you're seeing the Giants so easily being able to be thrown on. So similar situations is a lot of times, teams just don't have this cornerback depth, and this is going to be the one area where I was arguing that you could make a case for the Washington Commanders to be in Tier 1, still in Tier 2 for me because of this reason. I think they showed enough that they hung tough with the Ravens to say, like, hey, at least they're a playoff contender, but they're not in Tier 1. I have only 5 teams. The Ravens are there. Washington's in the next tier, mostly because of the deficiencies on defense.
Yeah, I have Washington a little bit farther down, still inside the top 10, though. There wasn't a big change from what I did. Obviously, the Chiefs didn't play.
Yeah.
In this cycle, at least, although they played on Monday night. We did the show before they played on Monday night, so they remain number 1. It was probably their best win of the year against the Saints. And I know that Derek Carr got hurt later in that game. I guess I want to ask you about Juju. In terms of wide receiver pickups, do you feel good if you added Juju? Do you feel good about starting him?
No. We remember Juju Smith-Schuster on the Chiefs, and Juju Smith-Schuster on the Chiefs is like, whoop-de-doo, 800-900 yards and a few touchdowns. It's like, cool, you're on the Chiefs. I will say, watching that game on Monday night, because we talked about it before that game happened, I don't know if that was just a one game he got jazzed up. We actually talked to Michael Sean Duger, who covers the Seahawks at The Athletic. He said some games when Tyler Lockett's going to go off because he's just jumping on the sidelines, jamming out to his music. And I was like, man, can we get a pregame camera on this guy so we know when he's going to have a good and bad game? I'm kind of using that to say, like, Juju, I don't know what it was, if he was hyped up for the game, but he looked more explosive than he did 2 years ago. Like, he looked bursty. Like, he looked like he could fit in this offense, be Rashee Rice. And if so, cool, not even Rashee Rice talking about wide receiver 1 territory, but we'd be talking about wide receiver 2. But I don't feel good because we know Juju Smith-Schuster and we've seen him over the past couple seasons. So yes, you have to pick him up because just like everybody else in the Chiefs, if he happens to become the number 2 wide receiver option, after Kelsey now at this point with no Rashee Rice, wide receiver 3 feels like the floor. But it also feels like we've seen a floor where he's a wide receiver 4 and just boring Jacoby Myers every single week.
Tier 2 for me in the power rankings, going from 2 to 3 is the Detroit Lions. Minnesota goes from 3 to 4. Houston stays at 5. San Francisco stays at 6. And Green Bay stays at 7. That's my Tier 2 right now for week number 5. The Packers receiving core is really interesting. So Wicks gets hurt with a shoulder injury. No clue if he's going to be out or not. Christian Watson just comes back from, I guess, his fake high ankle sprain, and he doesn't play a full complement of snaps, but he has the nice touchdown. Kid Romeo comes back after complaining, scores 2 touchdowns, and then Reed leaves the game, comes back. Their offense is, obviously it's big play, and Jacob still looks really good out of the backfield in the way that they're using him. The one thing about Jordan Love that I find, I don't know if it's troublesome or maybe it's a good thing. He makes some, because he can make all the throws, and we saw that in that Rams game when he just dropped that dime to Jaden Reed in triple coverage way down the field on the first drive of the game. He really tries to do a lot in forcing the ball in, and it's going to get him in a few of these games.
It's going to. It was kind of the situation with last year, too. That hot start, which was the high touchdown rate, and he was making some of these throws. And I'm not even talking about the fact that the touchdown rate came back. It's just you get got by some good teams at times, and he was on that downturn in the middle of the season. I think it's the risk you run with him. But, I mean, honestly, and no, I'm not saying he's Patrick Mahomes, but, like, this is the same conversation we had about Patrick Mahomes 2 years ago. He doesn't really do it anymore, but it was, why is Patrick Mahomes throwing left off his back foot, spinning around just because he's Patrick Mahomes, and like most of those throws end up working out because of the team he's on, and because he's Patrick Mahomes. So you're not wrong. I'm not that concerned about it. The biggest concern here is that I admitted it in the waiver column a week or two ago. I think it was the week that you and I didn't do it. So, a lot of people were saying, why weren't you higher in Jaden Reed? And it's like, because of what we just saw in this game is that they're just going to spread it around. I talked to Matt Schneider, who covered the Packers for The Athletic, and he said it's just going to be any given week who the number 2 is. The biggest mistake we made was not giving Reed the 20-plus target share. I had it flat across all wide receivers because figured all of them would be interchangeable any given week, but it's clearly Reed. That's obvious. But just because Dobbs had 2 touchdowns this game doesn't mean he's not going to go 3 for 50 next week with nothing, or even 2 for 40. And it's going to be the same thing with Watson has a touchdown, doesn't have a touchdown. Wicks, same thing. So I actually have them in my next tier. My top tier is 5 teams, and then Green Bay and San Francisco's in the next tier. That's where we differ again.
You would still have Washington. Oh, like, listen, I get that San Francisco's 3-3. They really do.
No.
What?
I have the 49ers in front of Washington.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes more sense then.
I knew where you were going. That's why I don't know. I don't like to cut you off too much, but I knew where you were going. I'll tell you so you know. So my tier 1 is Chiefs, Vikings, Texans, Lions, Ravens. That's tier 1. That's what I feel like right now. I feel like are the best 5 championship contenders.
Houston is still up in the air for me. Obviously, you got to put them here. They have the 1 loss, and they finally really did have an impressive win this week, and that was without Nico Collins. It just happened to come against a rookie quarterback in one of the 3 worst teams in the league.
Right.
But they took care of business, so it's hard to say, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to knock them down because they did win 70-0. They won the game like they were supposed to win it.
You're not wrong, and if this comes out to be like a couple 2 week, 3 bad week stretch, I mean, you're gonna have to knock them down big time. If it's just more of the fact that, like, hey, they're taking advantage of their soft schedule so far, and maybe they're not this good. I'm leaving that door open. The Green Bay, San Francisco, honestly, as I'm looking at my tier, I would almost pull them apart separately. Like Green Bay, I just feel like any of those 5 teams they're losing against. San Francisco, we joked last week, and I said, well, I did. I said, stop with the excuses. And they won their game. But at the same time, I just feel like something's off with this team. It's partly because they have a billion injuries. But initially, before the show, I had them as part of a tier with 4 of their teams being the Commanders, Steelers, Eagles, and Bills, because especially Eagles and Bills. But honestly, as we're talking, I would probably pull the Packers and 49ers out by themselves because it's kind of like have issues. They're almost there, but they're better than those other 4 teams.
Yes, but then I take a look at Detroit. So Aiden Hutchinson goes down for the season. What was with Detroit trying to get like double style points up 40 on Dallas? It was one thing to keep throwing later on in the game, but to run a hook and ladder with an offensive lineman trying to score a touchdown, it just seems like you should have kept that in your bag of tricks for later on in the year. Like, that was a great play.
I felt like somebody playing Madden and trying to be a jerk about it. I don't know. Maybe they're seeing if it could work, because why not try it then and then save it for your bag of tricks, because still nobody's going to be really calling a defensive game plan to stop that. So, hey, it worked. We'll save that for week 15 when people forgot that we tried to run that back in week 6. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. It also kind of felt like old school NCAA where you got the power rankings for them where you could strength of victory and stuff like that. So I don't know. But Detroit felt hesitant for me. I don't want to say Hutchinson completely knocks them out, but that's part of their defense is that they just get to the quarterback, dominate the run, and then, they can live with a questionable pass secondary. And right now, if they start, Hutchinson's a huge loss. I don't know. Is it going to be enough to knock this defense into all of a sudden it's a good matchup all around? And then I would have more concerns.
when I take a look at their defensive line and you take a look at where the pressure is generated from them, it's all Hutchinson and no one else does anything. So if they're now a team, like you said, that can't generate pressure, they have a weak secondary as it is, they'll win some games 40-45 or 45-40 or whatever it might be. Like kind of like how the Bucks win games.
Yeah, I was going to say put them in with the Commanders.
I feel like that they've earned enough to be ahead of the Commanders at this point.
No question. I just meant similar now that if they're not able to stop and get the pressure.
But I would say that's the one thing that Washington can actually do well, though, is they do get to the quarterback, and they rarely blitz. They just bring
four. But their secondary's terrible.
But like that was actually keeping them in that game against Baltimore for a while, was that they could just rush 4 and get home on Lamar. And they were containing him, like they just kept him in the pocket. So it wasn't even that they were generating a bunch of sacks against him. It's that, hey, we're not going to break contain here. And the one time Lamar got to the outside, boom, he was gone for like 35 yards down the field.
And that's what you run into with the Ravens. That's why they would be on a tier above the Commanders and, again, the Packers, as we talked about.
I'm just trying to find the number one player pressure rate here, if I can find player, yeah, who the number one pressure player is so far this year. I think it is Hutchinson.
I was going to say it has to be top 5. I was pulling up defenses while you're doing that, so there we go. You got 2 different things happening at the same time.
Yeah. So you effort that for me. But, yeah, I worry about their defense. That's why I dropped them down.
So
Minnesota's
Washington.
Washington.
They're the 4th highest pressure rate with only 4 rushers. It's Seahawks, Dolphins, Chiefs, then Commanders, and Vikings, 49ers at 6.
It's funny that the Vikings are listed on there because they blitz so often.
That's the thing, is they blitz. I brought that up, and I remember that. So, like, it's weird. The Vikings are weird. They get the top 5 pressure with only 4. They blitz a lot, but they are actually 5th worst with 5+ rushers at getting pressure.
Do you think we see...
So stop blitzing.
Yeah. Do you think that we see... Well, maybe that's a product of teams are so prepared for them to blitz all the time that when they only see 4, they kind of relax a little bit. And then...
There you go.
Like, it's a smaller sample size of them rushing 4 versus some of these other teams. So you don't need to get at home as often when your blitz rate is 48% or something.
It's 31, which nobody else is even close to 30. The highest other blitz rate is, Denver's 28, but then the next closest after them is 24, and then a 21 by the Detroit Lions. Interesting on this number, by the way, just to throw out while we're talking about it, Commanders, 3rd lowest on 5+ rushers, and they only blitz 17% of the time.
And they still get home, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, I don't get it.
In a weird way, like this team is structured... The back end of the defense isn't as good, and obviously the offense is better. A lot like those giant Super Bowl teams.
I was just about to say the same thing. 100%. Same thing.
And those defense would be less effective in 2024 than they were then because you had so many more statue quarterbacks when they won Super Bowls. Like if you tried to do that with Lamar the entire game, like Brady was never going to break one out on you and extend plays where like half the league can do that now. And that just wasn't the case at the time. But that's still going to be a pretty effective formula, I think. And what have you seen with the buzz about Washington with this loss to Baltimore? Like, are people like, oh yeah, they can beat up on some crappy teams and they play a good team, they're going to be cooked? Or do you think that people still believe? Because I believe.
Well, around here in Norfolk, Virginia, Virginia Beach, Virginia, the outlook is very positive. Almost absurdly so because it is Virginia. We're only 3.5 hours south of them. Of so much of like, man, if a couple things they like a play or two and they win that game, and now we're talking about being a Super Bowl. I'm like, all right, let's chill out a little bit. But at least people are coming out of that game positive, even though they lost.
I guess, listen, they got beat in that game. They deserve to lose. Baltimore played better in basically every facet of the game. But it's funny that fans will cope themselves into saying that, where, if this play goes that way or that play goes this way. No one more than Jags fans who came at me this week because I just called them an absolutely terrible team. It's like, wow, well, they should be 4-1 if a couple things happen. Yeah, like if they weren't actively bad in these games, then yeah, maybe they would have won. Great. That's a fantastic argument.
The Giants would be 5-1 if they didn't have Daniel Jones as their quarterback. Congratulations.
Yeah. Like honestly, the team that you can make the biggest case for that they should be 6-0.
49ers?
Baltimore should be 6-0.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's another one. I was gonna say the 49ers could be 5-1. Baltimore 6-0.
Like if you flip the coin the other way, the likely's foot ends up in that game, and they beat the Chiefs in the opening game of the season, and then they don't blow a huge lead against Vegas for unknown reasons.
Unknown reasons. Yeah, there's not really much of an explanation for that, is there? Unknown reasons is just probably the best way to put it.
So San Francisco, actually, with Minnesota, I don't think Aaron Jones is going to play this week.
Even if he doesn't, I think they're okay.
I mean, like I said, they look bad when Ty Chandler was the running back.
They did, but I think part of that is the same thing we talk about with like wide receivers and stuff like that. That's in game. If they've been planning this long to be possibly without Aaron Jones, it's going to be a slightly different offense. Ty Chandler, it's not that much different. It's not like you're going from Derrick Henry to Ty Chandler. So I think they'll be able to survive. I haven't even started week 7 yet. Who did the Vikings get this week out of the bye? I forget.
Detroit, Washington, Detroit, Minnesota.
It's a good thing there's no Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, like this is a good week. First week.
Oh, we're back to double Monday night?
I love double Monday night.
Why is the second game later? Why aren't we doing 7:30 and 8 again? We're down doing 8:15 and 8:45 because it's in Arizona.
Yeah, is Arizona currently in Pacific or Mountain time zone? Is that the one that flips?
They don't change. Yeah, that's the one that doesn't change. So if we've changed, we haven't changed yet, though, right? No, we haven't.
I don't know, Jake. It gets dark out so early anyway. It just feels like it already has changed if it hasn't yet.
Make me president. The two things. No more time zone changes like that, or we're done with daylight savings, and then we're putting the Super Bowl on President's Day weekend. There you go. Those are my 2 platforms.
I mean, the second one is just fire. I don't understand how that's not a thing anyway.
It will be once we have 18 games and 2 buys.
They're gonna extend the season for it to get to that point.
Yeah, that's what's just gonna. Which, by the way, if we ever do get to that point, they should just have a bye week, like for the entire league, like have an all-star weekend, don't play the Pro Bowl, but just have like a complete weekend off type of thing.
I don't know if they'd.
But the NFL will never do that.
I don't know if
they won't give the money away.
Yeah, why would they give away a week's? How much do you think a week's worth of money is for the NFL revenue-wise?
$1 billion?
Yeah, like somewhere
I'm
around
not even
there?
like. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we have that tier right now. So tier 3, I have Washington, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay as the 3 teams at number 8, 9, and 10. So that's unchanged from last week. They're all kind of similar to each other in a weird way, I feel like. And I think that Washington has the best offense of that bunch. Although, as Cuss did point out, Tampa Bay's offense is rolling right now.
It is. Even with the interceptions yesterday by Baker Mayfield, they still continue to just click. And that was also Mike Evans left that game, and they continue to click. So I don't have a problem with that. I'd still go, as I mentioned, I'd still go Eagles and Bills. Now, Bills could completely change tonight. I know they look shaky without Khalil Shakir, and if they look terrible against the Jets, I would knock them out. Similar with the argument with the Eagles, like I feel like both those teams, a lot of things going wrong, and both of them have winning records right now. And I feel like if you told me, heads up, you have to take the Falcons, either one of those teams, the Bucks, either one of those teams. And I know the Bucks beat the Eagles, but again, they weren't 100%. I just feel like it's your 49ers argument. I'm not saying you have to agree with me, and I'm not putting that argument and saying like, haha, got you, Pat. Similar to your 49ers argument, I just feel Eagles and Bills, I'll still give the benefit of the doubt over the Bucks and Falcons, who I have directly behind them. But I still lean both those two teams. But I don't have a problem with it. I would, again, give them the edge just as of today.
I don't find that either of those teams look particularly good is the problem. Like, even when San Francisco isn't looking good, they still look good. They just blow a late lead defensively. There's something off with both these offenses that you think with everyone back at full health for the Eagles this week, maybe it was a week off, bit of rust, maybe not, everyone's not completely 100%, and then Goddard immediately goes out in that game. It's not like the Browns have been shutting everyone out all year, and they could barely move the ball.
It's, again, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's one of those, 2 weeks from now, maybe we're having a completely different conversation. It's just that they're not clicking, and they're still 3-2. So, again, your argument to this side of it might be right. I'm a little bit more hesitant to push them down further.
Tampa, are they real? Do you think Atlanta should be ahead of Tampa Bay, or should Tampa be ahead of Atlanta?
If I took it on any given week, I would still take Tampa over Atlanta.
I just worry a lot about Tampa's defense. And they made some really nice adjustments in the second half now. It was against Spencer Rattler. But every time Rattler would roll out to the right in the first half, it was like an auto completion after 2 minutes into the game. It was jarring to watch a Saints quarterback be able to have any sort of mobility in the backfield.
You're not wrong. And hey, look, this is coming from somebody who's a fan more so than a lot of people on Rattler, and I'm not saying, oh my God, there's now a quarterback controversy with Rattler. Although, if he balls out on Thursday night with no Chris Olave against the Broncos defense, then we might have a controversy. But I'm not super excited for no Olave against the Broncos. Saints, where do you have this? I have Saints all the way down at 23, by the way, just to kind of throw that out there. But yeah, Tampa Bay defense is legitimately a concern. I don't know. I just feel like the way that they're able to go against the Eagles last year in the playoffs, and I know things change in the offseason, but I just feel like they have a better idea of what they're doing, where the Falcons are like, oh, this week it's Kirk Cousins. This week we're going to run with both running backs. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're just that smart, and it's like, hey, this is what we do this week to beat those teams. But I just feel like they're still trying to figure themselves out.
Everyone loaded up on Mooney and Ray McLeod this week against Carolina. It's going to be hard to trust anyone who even Drake London wasn't all that good in that game, was he? Did he do anything late?
No, I saved the day with the touchdown.
What's that?
He got the touchdown.
He got the touchdown. He got the touchdown at the end.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching a ton of Carolina Atlanta after the game. After Atlanta got into the 30s, it was like, okay, all right, Carolina's not coming back now. Although Carolina not afraid to put up their 22 points every week. It's nice.
Hey, they're fun. I think to something we've talked about before, Chuba Hubbard potentially a buy high if you're going to get him for a low end RB2 value, because Brooks is going to come back, but who knows? I mean, if you need wins right now, I think that you could still buy, and I say high in quotes because people are looking to get rid of him because of the Brooks return.
We don't know when Brooks is going to be back yet, though. Like his practice window still hasn't opened. Maybe it does this week, but I'd say week 8 at best, probably week 9 or week 10.
Yeah, and then are they like this season they're not a competitor, so we know Brooks is about the future. This is kind of like when the Giants drafted Barkley. Like, what the hell are you doing? But I know this one wasn't a first round pick. But why do you bring Jonathan Brooks back and immediately treat him like a bell cow when the season's out the window? Bring him along slowly. We might even not give Jonathan Brooks as a lead this year. There's a potential for that.
When do we get to the point where they just bench Dalton again and play Bryce Young?
I kind of said that to Meany on All in Fantasy. I felt like once they're 10 games in, like 2-8, 1-9, even 3-7. I think once the point is like, hey, it's officially done. I mean, we know they're done, but like once it's officially done and you can kind of say like, all right, we'll give you the last 5-6 games. I think that's potential 7 games in that case. But I think that's when we start to see potentially Bryce Young, because you have to figure this out. You know, Andy Dalton's not the answer. So you need to figure out, is Bryce Young done and we need to go back to a quarterback in next year's draft, because they need to know.
So would that hurt the buy high on Chuba Hubbard argument? Because I would kind of wager like, hey, maybe listen, with Chuba Hubbard, maybe you won't get the return that you want for him or what he's potentially worth right now. And we don't even know what the split between him and Brooks is going to look like the moment it comes back, like you point out. But right. I'd be actively trying to flip Deontay Johnson.
Deontay Johnson's the bigger concern. I 100% agree with you. I actually traded Deontay Johnson in 2 different leagues because I had a lot of Deontay Johnson to start the season. I felt like this is a good time being on the winning side and kind of buying low on like a Tua or a Waddle or something like that. And I wasn't saying Tua, or not Tua, Tyreek Hill. I wasn't straight up for Tyreek Hill, but like those kind of situations, if you're winning and somebody needs Deontay Johnson, and they had a big day for that person yesterday, but I'm okay with that because it's more of, if I'm wrong on Bryce Young and it's not week 11, all of a sudden it's week 8, your sell high window's gone.
What did you trade Deontay Johnson for?
So I sent Deontay Johnson. This is one of the 2. This was the most recent one. It was Deontay Johnson and Tony Pollard. And I got back Brian Robinson and a better wide receiver, because the person also needed a running back. Who was the wide receiver? I'll just pull it up for you. I can just tell you what the trade was instead of just trying to figure this all out. Here we go. Trade, sleeper. I sent, because people are going to get mad. Tony Pollard, Deontay Johnson for Brian Robinson and Rome Odunze.
I mean, you got Brian Robinson, who's by far the best player in that deal.
That was the goal of the deal.
Yeah. I think that's a good type of package Like Deontay 1-for-1, like you're not going to get what you want for him unless it's like a pure challenge trade, like Deontay Johnson for Brian Robinson or Deontay Johnson for Joe Mixon. Probably that wouldn't work.
Right.
Unless someone is so desperate at wide receiver, that's what they have to do. But that would be the type of player that I'd be trying to get back as the main piece in a Deontay Johnson trade right now.
And then I took a flyer at wide receiver, which Odunze might not be anything.
No, but you don't have to play him right now.
Right. And I didn't really have to play Deontay. My decision every single week was Deontay Johnson, Brian Thomas, and I forget somebody else. So it's just like I got one of the question marks out of the equation.
Did Noah Brown reestablish himself now back on the field as the secondary receiver that you might want to own on Washington?
100%. And that was something Ben Standig from The Athletic said in the preseason when I was like, how is this wide receiver situation going to shake out? And I think we talked about it the very first show of this year, is that he said to me, he's like, if Noah Brown was with this team all offseason, he would 100% be the number 2. It's just he's got to get used to this team and the playbook. And we saw that kind of start to show up in week 3-ish, and then he got hurt, and Dyami Brown had the game, but it's Noah Brown 100%. The only issue I have there is it's kind of like chasing Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson. It's like you might get a wide receiver 3 or 2 performance, and then other weeks you're going to get nada. And I'm saying that because Michael Pittman with Josh Downs is the 2 with Richardson. Noah Brown is the 2 behind Terry McLaurin. You're going to get a good week followed up by a bad week. You have to basically if you have a league where you do have to start them, deeper leagues, you just got to keep them out there because it's going to be hard to predict which games are going to be good and bad.
For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening? A new language? Or, for me personally, how to finally beat your best friend in golf? Not cussed, but, my other friends. I want to beat them at golf. I can beat cuss, no problem. Therapy can help reconnect you with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come, honestly, at any age. It's helpful learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries, and it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major traumas. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All the best things that you need. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/PatMayo today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PatMayo. Tier number 4 for me, basically the same as last week. One team enters Tier 4. I have the Steelers sticking at 11, Philly at 12, Buffalo at 13. Obviously, Buffalo has not played in week number 6 yet, so we're recording this before the Monday Night Football game. And then I got Chicago moving from 16 to 14. They beat the crap out of the Jags. That's good to see, though. I am still unconvinced that they're this great team. They're slightly above average. But their defense is pretty good, and they just don't give up big plays, which is super helpful. Eventually, we'll see what happens when they come out of the bye week. They play Washington, and as we just mentioned, Washington can generate a ton of pressure. They've just played 3 teams in a row, which Caleb has looked really good against, that generate zero pressure to speak of. So once you start getting in his face, and even the Jags, like, I mean, the bad Josh Allen, Josh Hines Allen now, he's so bad had to change his name. Not that he's bad, he's just not as good as the Josh Allen, so you have to differentiate between them. But like, he was wreaking havoc on that line and causing Caleb a lot of problems. Unfortunately, he's the only guy in the Jags defense who can do that.
That is true. And the funny thing here is I actually have a team that you argued for that would come into this tier for me. I have Chicago Bears at 14 as well. And what I liked from Caleb in that game specifically is the pressure. He actually took off and ran. That was the biggest thing about him in college and his early start to his career is that in college, the biggest complaint we got from last season was he tries to play hero ball. He extends plays. He can extend plays. But then instead of running, when there's a huge lane in front of him, he chucks it downfield and tries to make this huge play. A lot of times gets turnovers and stuff like that. And that was everybody like, Caleb, you don't need to win every single play like that. And he ran yesterday. If he starts to run, and I'm not even talking about, he doesn't need to be Josh Allen. Hell, he doesn't even need to be Daniel Jones and running for 700 yards. Just run for 300 or 400, and you bring that threat to your game. And Caleb Williams is going to have more good games than bad. I'm with you. A lot of defenses that were very soft so far through this run. We want to see them really tested, but I feel better about the Bears overall as they're starting to gel, mostly because a part of it is including a healthy Keenan Allen.
It is, and we saw how effective he and Cole Kmet could both be on that team. It's just they're beating up on the dregs of the NFL. They played all four. Of course, they played all 4 AFC South teams.
Yeah, so that's already out the window. There's not much left of that schedule. The team that would actually, in the AFC, I would put in this tier, because if you told me neutral field versus Chicago, Cincinnati. Yeah, like you talk about a team, you could be 4-2, 5-1. And I will say everybody's going to be like, well, they beat up on the Giants. The Giants to this point have been pretty competitive for most games. Yeah, they've been, and their defense has been getting after the quarterback. Their offense has been able to move the ball pretty well against a decent amount of teams. And the Bengals defense showed up in that game. And then they just took care of business, so to speak, in that game. So I think the Bengals, and you talk about that with the whole situation with Isaiah Likely, the Bengals 2 plays flip the other direction and they're 4-2, and nobody's even thinking about them not being in the conversation with like the Packers possibly.
I made an underdog entry for Monday Night Football. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
Josh Allen higher than 33.5 rushing yards. Sounds pretty good, right? Because Josh Allen sucks against the Jets. Like, they do a very good job. Like, the Bills have terrible receivers as it is, and the Jets have a great pass defense. Like, Josh Allen couldn't do a ton against the Bills when he had his good receivers. I don't know what he's going to do against the Bills with bad receivers. So he's probably just going to take off and run. Hopefully, I mean, even if he takes a blow to the head, Josh Allen out there powering through it. Not a big deal for Josh Allen. So higher on the 33.5 rushing yards for him. Higher than 2.5 catches for James Cook, who I'm guessing is playing. They said they expect him to play. And if he's not going to throw to the guys on the outside, it's going to be Shakir, Kincaid, and dump-offs. Hopefully it's with James Cook. He's healthy enough to
might not even be Shakir.
It might not. I think Shakir is going to play too. We'll see.
Okay.
But so those two. And then I took Braylon Allen lower rushing yards. It's like 34.5. I just think with the new coaching staff, there's been just so many like rumblings about Breece Hall that they're really going to try to get Breece Hall going. And they'll use Braylon Allen in short yardage situations. So you just hope that he doesn't, break through a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 1 and break it off for like 30 yards. And he just averages like 4 yards a carry or something.
I don't mind the combo that you have to talk about the Braylon Allen situation with the coaching change. Everybody's like, oh, what does this mean? And like, look, if the coaches aren't going to tell us and they're not going to tell the beat reporters and not going to tell everybody inside the locker rooms, what do you think we're going to know? We can speculate, but there's 3 outcomes here. It's all Breece Hall again, and we feel great about Breece Hall as a top 5 running back again, and Braylon Allen just comes in as a change of pace. Maybe the coach switches completely, and Nathaniel Hackett was the one that was kind of playing this more Breece Hall, and all of a sudden it's a 50-50 split, and we're miserable. Or maybe they try to let Braylon Allen be the guy. I think that's by far the least possible, but that he gets 70%. What you brought up, though, is the only concern I do have, is that even if it is Breece Hall 75% of the touches, is that if Braylon Allen starts getting the goal line carries, because Breece Hall is one of 8 running backs before week 6. I haven't seen the numbers since, but he was one of 8 running backs when I pulled it up that had 100% of his team's running back touches inside the 5. 100%. that's a big deal if they start giving some of those to Braylon Allen. So that's my only concern here with the coaching change.
That's a concern for fantasy. That's not a concern for my
lower
on the rushing yard. Give him as many touches from the 2-yard line as you want for me. That's
you can still only get 2 yards.
Yeah, 2 yards is the max on this one. Just overall with running back pickups for the week, I have all of these in the newsletter. They're down in the description right now, and I'll update them if injuries change. I still have Tyron Tracy as the number 1 running back pickup. I think the job, I don't want to say it's his when Singletary comes back, but I think it's at least 50-50.
I'm with you on the 50-50. There's nothing like we talked about it last week, and that, like if Singletary was out again, and it happened again, you can't ignore it again. So at this point, I think there's a push here. The only hesitancy I have on that being full 50-50 is I've heard from multiple reporters, and himself included, the person I'm about to bring up. Brian Dable loves Singletary. This is why they went after them in the offseason. He just loves the guy. He's fumbled, and he still's like, I don't care. Singletary's my guy. So maybe 60-40. I'd buy in on that. Even maybe 55-45. I know I love the split because I'm a Tracy fan. It's just I don't know if it quite gets there. And honestly, if it was a 50-50 on the Giants offense, that would actually make me like they're both RB3s. I'd say Tracy has the higher ceiling because of his explosiveness and his passing game work, but I don't really want to use these 2 running backs, not on the Giants.
I wouldn't be burning waiver priority or spending a bunch of fab on any of these guys, but I go Tracy, Chandler, Garendo, Braylon Allen, and Kimani Vidal. Gus Edwards on injured reserve. Now they're giving J.K. Dobbins like 30 touches a game. He's going to be dead in a week.
I could see it happening. The thing I love from Dobbins is that, I had him lower than he should have been because it's like, hey, this is a bad matchup. And even if he gets 20 touches, well, he blew past 20 touches and actually looked like the J.K. Dobbins that we hoped he could be this year, that he was pre-injury. And it's like, hey, J.K. Dobbins, certain running backs, even against bad defense or bad matchups, really good defenses, I don't care. I'm with you. Until hurt, J.K. Dobbins is RB1.
I agree. I agree with you. The guy gets hurt every year, and that was on like 11 touches a game.
I know. Mike Williams are running backs. It's coming.
So like Ty Chandler and Garendo really depend on the injury status. Like I'm not high on them outside of 1 week. And I think Jordan Mason's going to play this week.
It sounded like there's a chance. Wasn't there something that they said if it was like a playoff game or something that he could have came back?
They said that about Christian McCaffrey in week 1 too, and he hasn't been seen since.
Fair point.
So we talked about
sir.
At wide receiver, I go Juju, Downs, Demario Douglas, Quentin Johnston, ankle dependent. And I still have Jalen Tolbert at number 5. I get that Dallas is going on bye week, so you can't really use him here. But they do really want to use him as long as Brandon Cooks is out as the number 2.
Yeah, I think that Tolbert might have grabbed that job. I'm still Downs number 1. But I mean, if you want to flip those 2, I'm not going to be like, oh gosh, you're stupid. I wouldn't be too excited for Chris Olave being out for Bub Means, even in a 1-week play. He's facing Denver, and that Surtain has a concussion too, so Surtain might not be out there.
Well, Surtain was going to take out Olave anyway, so it's like a push.
Well, I was going to say, like, people are like, oh, well, Surtain might not go after Shaheed just depending on where he lines. Yeah, it is. Point being, I'm not going too crazy about Bub Means. Like, for people that are asking, I would still go Xavier Legette and Quentin Johnston, as you brought up, definitively. Although I think the Patriots are interesting because I thought it was going to be Jalen Polk, and all of a sudden it's Booty.
No, the answer is Demario Douglas, man. Like, you have to think. Yeah. Like, I connected all these dots, and fortunately, if you played some underdog along with me with all the Patriots guys, you cashed in bigly. There was 3 hires that I gave out. It was Antonio Gibson, Hunter Henry, and Demario Douglas. Why? Because those guys are the guys who stand the closest to Drake May.
You're not wrong. But Drake May, as you saw, will take some big shots downfield. The problem is a lot of them sailed out of bounds and 20 yards past the wide receiver.
I think we'll talk about quarterback streams. I think he's the best stream of the week. Unless Cooper Kupp is back, then it's probably Stafford. But I have May, Stafford, Dalton, and Herbert. But May against Jacksonville in London, he just might generate 3 touchdowns a week. It might not look good. Like, you wouldn't want to actually play this guy in real life, but in your fantasy lineup, he'll be like quarterback 14 this week. He runs a ton.
Yeah, sure, but I'd still go Stafford. I know your cutoff is different. Darnold's the one, which I don't know how he's still under 60% on Yahoo.
Yeah.
I know you have a
I have a 50% cutoff. Yeah.
Yeah. So mine are actually Darnold, Stafford, May, and then I would risk Daniel Jones over at Philly over Justin Herbert, Arizona. Just Herbert doesn't need to pass. He just doesn't need to.
I suppose. Yeah, I suppose you're right. So maybe I will put Daniel Jones in at number 4, bump Herbert down to number 5. For the tight ends, I just have Hunter Henry, Otton, Ertz, and Fant. Like, none of them are priority pickups.
Yeah, I would say Kate Otten, especially if Mike Evans is banged up. Taysom Hill, if he ever plays again.
Mike Evans came back into that game, by the way.
Did he?
Yeah.
To your point about...
He got hurt early and just didn't do anything the rest of the game.
Oh, so see, like I said, to your point about like this is why Monday is a lot of going back and watching the games again. I had started to like focus on other games because of like, hey, I got what I got out of this game. Like I know obviously Godwin's got like previewing the next matchup between these two teams. What are you going to say? You know who you're starting for the Falcons. You know who you're starting for the Buccaneers. Check. Everybody's going good. I already saw one in DC from Bucky Irving. Cool. I've moved on from that game. So I actually haven't seen yet. I missed that fact that Mike Evans came back.
Yeah, Evans ended up running 43. He ended up playing 43 snaps, 28 routes in that game.
Okay.
Because they ended up pulling everyone.
I still say Kate Otten's a decent streamer.
Yeah, he's a decent streamer, but I think Henry with May is a little bit better because at least he might just be the one in any given week, where that's never really going to be the case with Kate Otten.
And that was good to see because Austin Hooper was starting to take too much away from Hunter Henry, and now like that shifted back.
Well, Austin Hooper was doing a little bit until they threw him a screen pass, and then he basically dropped it but didn't, then fumbled while trying to get up with it. And it was like, see you later, Austin Hooper.
Speaking of which... Maybe I should throw this question to you, is that Zach Moss, once he fumbled...
Never seen again.
0 touches, never seen again for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I had Chase Brown ranked above him anyway, so maybe I'll just push that gap larger in week number 7.
I think the gap needs to be larger. I still had Moss barely in front of Chase Brown because bad information. I got from a couple beat reporters saying that like when Zach Moss is healthy, he's their guy. They like Chase Brown, but they still don't trust him in pass blocking, blah, 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 blah. And... that was completely wrong. So much so the fact that all it took was a fumble for Zach Moss to be a non-factor the rest of the game.
For defense, I have New Orleans number 1 against Denver on Thursday night. Washington number 2 against Carolina because of that pressure rate. Andy Dalton sounds good to me. Indy at home against Miami. Denver at New Orleans. And then Jacksonville at home against New England.
No Rams against the Raiders?
I have the Rams at 9. Like their defense is bad, man. It's really
bad. It is, but it's the Raiders. The Raiders are bad with anything.
Yeah, but the Raiders aren't afraid to just be like, you know what? We're just not throwing. We'll run the ball 40 times for nothing.
Okay.
And we'll live with
it. That's fair. We also had that Aiden O'Connell game last year where he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter, so...
yeah, like Cincinnati, Minnesota, the Giants, I think they're all there. Minnesota, I think, like daily fantasy-wise, is the sneakiest one because no one's going to want, especially with Detroit coming off that huge game. But we've seen how Jared Goff cannot sustain himself under pressure, and that's what we just kind of pointed out with Minnesota, is that they're going to get after the quarterback. And without Aiden Hutchinson, maybe Minnesota can jump, and they've been good at jumping out to leads. You force Detroit to pass a bunch in this game, you could get the bad Goff game here.
You can. So are you talking rankings? Because didn't you say Denver? Denver's way past 50, though.
Oh, I thought I had them at 43%. Maybe I just misread
Denver's
that.
80.
Oh, yeah, I was looking. You're right. I was looking at a different team. My bad. I got to take them out of
I just want to make sure.
Yes, no, you're right. It's supposed to be 50% or below. Detroit or Denver is past that. I am sorry. Let's move to tier number 5.
Maybe you were looking at New Orleans, who's 34.
Yeah,
that's what it was on the other side.
I had them at number 1, though. But tier 5 for the power rankings. I got the Bengals, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Jets. The Bengals and Chargers maybe should be closer to tier number 4, but if they do stupid things, like the Bengals actively tried to give away the Monday or the Sunday night game.
And they still won.
They
there
did.
You go.
That was good for them.
So, I do have the Bengals a little bit higher, but I think that game was telling for actually both teams, is that the Giants are going to be competitive most weeks, which is annoying for anybody that still roots for them and hopes that they can rehaul this offense and get a new quarterback, because I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants finish with 6 wins and then they're not even the top 5 pick and potentially can't get a quarterback. On the flip side, the Bengals still have some concerns, mostly being on defense. So I'm with you. Again, I have the Bengals higher. My tier here is Jets, Dolphins. I'm still putting, like, 2 is only 2 games away. I still have hope. You know, I might be crazy, but I still feel like the Dolphins with Tua back deserves to be in this conversation because I don't trust the other 2 teams, being the Jets and the Seahawks. The Seahawks 3-0, 3-3, and their defense is beyond. That defense is almost as bad as the Jaguars' defense. You just pass on them at will.
Yeah, and the Chargers are, I guess, sort of like the boring version of the Steelers. Like,
yeah, I have them on the highest end of this tier.
Yeah, the Chargers are good, but obviously they're not. I feel like they could knock off. It's interesting. Like, they could lose to the Giants, or, I mean, they just beat Denver. They could lose to Denver. They could lose to Indy. They could lose to the Rams. But I could also see them beating Philadelphia or Atlanta or Tampa. Like, they're just a weird in-between team.
Well, isn't that the case with the Chargers for basically the past decade?
Yeah, but this version of the Chargers is so much different than all the other versions. This is like,
it is,
great
but it's still
running,
the same outcome.
Running, great defense. Like, this is more like the Schottenheimer Chargers than anything we've seen the past 2 decades.
Yeah, but it's still the same Chargers that, like, hey, you're going to blow the game with a field goal or miss field goal at the last second or give up the field goal at the last second, and then you're going to beat a team that you shouldn't beat. Yeah, there's still the Chargers are the Chargers, basically.
What do you make of the Jets in this coaching change? Do you think it's going to help them, hurt them, or are they just like a 500 team?
It can't get worse.
I mean,
let's be honest.
It can get worse.
How?
Like, Rodgers continues to deteriorate?
I think he's already deteriorated completely. Like, honestly, what's the big difference here? Like, I don't know. Maybe he finds a spark on this team, not being Rodgers with the coaching change, but maybe he finds a spark here and it's like, hey, he's watching something Hackett isn't. Like, he just sees, okay, this is how we can get squeeze a little bit more juice from Aaron Rodgers. We're going to shift the offense to be more intermediate game. Maybe we stop letting him throw the ball deep outside because he doesn't have that anymore. I don't know, whatever it is. Like, hey, the game plan last week with Garrett Wilson, that works. I mean, teams are going to see that if you start targeting him 15 times a game, which honestly was over 20. But I think that we have to find something that works. Maybe it's lean into the run game. But I think the biggest issue is why I say it can't get any worse, but I don't know how much better it's going to get, is because it really all still comes down to the offensive line. That offensive line was supposed to be better this year, and it can't run block and it can't pass block. It's not doing anything good right now. So unless he has a fix there, and some of it might actually just be changing pieces on the offensive line, I don't know that this offense is going to be much better. I think we just hope that we can get value out of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall the rest of the way. That's what I think we're hoping for.
I do find it comical that people point to Nate Hackett and be like, oh yeah, the Nate Hackett play calling, like Nate Hackett's actually calling plays. He is there to be the scapegoat for when it goes wrong for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers sucks, like, oh, it's Nate Hackett's fault. Not Aaron Rodgers' fault. That's Nate Hackett's fault. So now
oh my God,
the head coach is gone. They've stripped Hackett of his play calling duties. I want to see who the next guy up is who has to fall on the sword for Aaron Rodgers not being good.
Be careful, Pat. Because I tweeted jokingly about this of like, oh yeah, it's all the coaches, it's Hackett, it's Saleh, it's everybody else. It's nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers' play. And oh my God, the political, like, you want to talk about some of the stuff I got in tweets about like how, I mean, F you and your left or right, I don't even know which way it goes. Like, that's how much I care about it. Like, the people that, be careful. Like, when you come for defending somebody like the other side of the Aaron Rodgers, holy crap, people come for you. I was not expecting that.
That's too bad. It'd be like, so it's probably the same thing with Travis Kelce. You make fun of Travis Kelce, you get all the Swifties after you.
The Swifties?
You make fun of Aaron Rodgers. Not only do you get these like weird people with the American flag and a bunch of numbers in their Twitter handle, you probably also get like the weird crystal hippie people too.
It's always possible. You know what's just funny that you say that is that Travis Kelce can hop on a jet and go to all the Taylor Swift concerts, but Malik Neighbors in town goes to a concert while he's dealing with a concussion and the people that came for him. Holy, it's so
just,
funny.
It's just being in New York, man. People in New York care so much about this stuff, and their teams, I mean, their baseball teams are good. Their football teams are dog shit.
It's true. God forbid you go on a boat on your off day before playoff game.
Yeah, like, listen, maybe you can put that up to like bad judgment or whatever, but like, yeah, maybe it's because he has a concussion, he shouldn't be at a rock concert or where the hell he went to. It's like, it's too loud. I could buy that at least, but like, what do I care?
No, it was rap, and like the bass is not giving him a concussion.
Well, maybe it's probably not helping.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Well,
Somebody asked me that. They're like, what's the problem with Malik Neighbors? How come he didn't come back from a concussion in 1 week? Like, I don't know. I'm not a neurologist.
Yeah, he didn't pass protocol. Tier 6, I have a lot of teams. New Orleans at 19, Arizona, Dallas, the Rams, Denver, Indy, and the Giants. That's 19 through 25. That's my tier number 6 here. I could see the Rams getting better with Kupp probably back this week, Nakua back pretty soon, that their offense their offense has been good without those guys, but with them could start to look really good again.
It could. It'll be interesting. I go back to, I don't know why Cooper Kupp's not on the trade block, because the Rams season feels kind of lost. Maybe they still have hope at this point, and maybe that's why they don't want to give him up. The Nakua thing, asked Jordan Rodriguez, and she said as long as he doesn't have a setback, which, I mean, I'm not saying she's being vague on purpose, but I think that's a vague answer. Like, a setback could be a million things, my point being. And she said the hope is that then Nakua is 100% and on the field week 10 to kind of give you a range of when Nakua is expected team-wise to be back. I have this same exact tier, except for one team. I actually go all the way down one more spot. I'd throw the Raiders in there just because I don't feel like there's a difference between any of these teams.
Oh, I do. I think that these teams all do certain things well. Like, you can point to, like, one thing that they do well.
Okay, fine. I'll knock the Raiders out then, because they don't do anything
They don't do anything well.
That's fine. I went down, like, I'll chop them off. I'll put them in the bottom tier. Mostly because I put all the one-win teams in one tier, except for the Rams.
I can't really tell you what Indy does well, but they seem to do enough average to skate by.
And this is without Jonathan Taylor.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you what's not good is their medical team, or it's the greatest on earth. I don't understand how Michael Pittman can essentially have a broken back and be out for 6 weeks, and then he's just playing and catching touchdowns.
And then comes out after the game and says, IR still on the table.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Like, there's a chance he gets, like, robbed and stabbed at a gas station after the game. It's like, yeah, well, IR would be on the table if that happens. Not from football-related things, but maybe something else happens. I'm not from the future. I don't know.
Apparently, Michael Pittman's doctor's the same one that did the Josh Allen concussion test last week.
Just gave him some smelling salts. Yeah, rub some dirt on it. Yeah, you get back out there.
He put some Voltaren on his back and was like, get back out there.
Denver, obviously, they have a good D. You can see, like, the Rams' running game is very good, and Stafford is still really good. Kyler's good, but that team just goes up and down every single week. 1 week they look awesome. The next week they look... It's every second week, too, so I guess they're playing the Chargers this week. They'll beat the Chargers by, like, 40 or something.
Nah, they might not have Harrison.
They're probably not going to have Harrison.
We haven't seen that yet this year. Usually we find like one or two where they come back the same week. We haven't had a concussion come back the same week yet.
Well, this would be one where it could happen because this is a Monday Night Football game, so you do get the extra day.
Extra day. That's what I was going to bring that up.
But
I mean, like, look at it. Malik Neighbors.
Well, I have
10 days and they didn't get it.
I have seen some discourse around younger players suffering their first concussion that, well, at least at the pro level, that these younger players end up taking more time to come back to pass protocol.
Well, a lot of times for first, this is something I actually do know because I have a family member who's had multiple concussions, is that the first concussion's the worst, and usually by your fourth or fifth, the doctors are like, yeah, you can even go to sleep. There's nothing to do at this point. You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You and your massive brain trauma. Yeah, well, there's nothing we can do about this now. It's already fucked.
Can we... I tweeted that out yesterday. Just make the Guardians find something to put over it that looks better than that freaking stocking. It shouldn't be that hard. I could come up with something that looks better than that, and then just mandate the Guardian helmets. The biggest complaint is they look stupid. Figure that out, and let's move forward with these things.
I mean, you're either going to be looking stupid when you're playing or talking stupid when you're 50. Those are the two options if you don't wear the Guardian helmet.
I don't get how I style over brains. Like, I can't. There's my third platform. There you go. Guardian helmets for everybody.
Well, how effective are they in concussion prevention versus the regular helmet? Like, do we have enough of a longer-term data sample to actually know that?
The article, well, it's actually reducing them from happening, the rate. So, I mean, I guess that could be any off number, any given time. But at least the rate from what the article over with The Athletic was when they'd surveyed and said, like, I think a third of the players were like, it looks stupid. I think they said it's like a fourth of the concussions while wearing them. I mean, players, like coaches, doctors, all admitting that it works. So even if it's half, and not a fourth.
If it's anything, yeah. But I mean, listen, I'm with him. They do look stupid.
Yeah, but that's because the stocking thing, and you can see the little bumps and everything. They just threw a legit stocking over top. Take a soft hat and just make a cutout of this to put over top of it.
Now, but I don't want to hear any of these NFL players saying, "Hey, I won't wear this stupid-looking helmet," and then see him in one of those stupid oversized hats after the game.
Oh, I'm so glad those are gone. You know what I really think it's going to take? As my buddy said this to me, so I'm stealing it from him, but he's made a really good point. I think it's going to take a big name, somebody like a running back who touches the ball all the time, or a top end like wide receiver. Like if Jamar Chase started wearing it, I think you need somebody to kind of like break the ice, and not like random linebacker on the fourth string. Like you need somebody of a big name, big attention to say like, yeah, I'm going to wear this because it's important, and then move forward with it.
All the guys currently wearing the Guardian helmet are the ones who like still need to work after their NFL career is over in 3 weeks.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like the ones that are like, I don't even know who that guy is.
Yeah, like I need this brain power for when I'm 28 and out of football and like have to work the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Tier 7 is one team for me, the Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Like they're bad.
Because you don't know.
And I don't know when Tua's coming back. Like even today, Mike McDaniel said it's not going to be week 7. Could it be week 8? Maybe. Or it could be way longer than that. Like as long as they don't have them, they're one of the worst teams in the league.
I thought he wasn't even allowed to. I thought he still had 2 more games on the IR.
Yeah, he could come back week 8, I think.
I thought it was 2 more. I thought he could come back week 9. I could be wrong, but that's okay. That's good information because during the week last week when their bye was coming up, they said that doctors had already cleared him and said he doesn't need to stop playing football because he's not going to do more damage. So I thought that like meant he was kind of already clear. So yeah, this is what it is. You're not wrong. Like I would put Miami in the conversation with like the Jets and the Chargers because with Tua, but I mean if Tua's out for 7 more games, then of course, they're in their weird. We don't know what to do.
Oh, it was also reported that Travis Etienne is week to week with hamstring, aka being awful.
Look, at this point, I hope he sits out because I was tired of trying to figure out if he's going to get whacked in the shoulder again after 2 straight games of that. Hamstring is honestly worse. I mean, we see what these do, soft tissue injuries. So, yeah, Travis Etienne heading towards a lost season himself.
So let's see. Yeah, Tua, Mike McDaniel said, won't play week 7, expected to resume playing in 2024. So that could be like week 18 for all we know.
Yeah.
But week 8 does seem to be the week where he is allowed to come off injured reserve. So all those buy lows on Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I think with the week off, maybe Snoop Huntley gets a little bit better. But I don't think it's going to save these guys as wide receiver ones until Tua comes back, if he comes back.
If he comes back, the hope is that he does. They get the Colts this week, so decent matchup to look well.
Final tier, the last tier, the dregs of the
5?
situation. Tier number 8 has 16.
6.
Carolina, Jacksonville, the Raiders, New England, Cleveland, and Tennessee.
They all suck.
They're all terrible. At least you can point to certain things that are fun about some of these teams. Like, if you were a fan of any of these teams, who would you feel the best about right now? Maybe not like long-term in being good, but just on a week-to-week basis. Like, it's got to be the Patriots at the moment with Drake May. Like, at least that's something.
It is something. I was going to say the Jaguars, but...
Why?
Because they can at least be... Because the games will be entertaining.
The game should be entertaining. Like, I just don't know how you watch this team and think that they're any good. Like, you see the pieces of it, and they're like...
biggest...
Again, they're just... But it's every week. It's like, oh, yeah, well, they dropped 8 passes. Well, maybe their players aren't good.
Maybe their quarterback isn't good. Like here's all you need to know. So I tongue in cheek, I was like joking during that game, and I said, if they're the number 1 pick in the draft, should they draft a quarterback? And the number of people who were like, you are dumb as blank. They just gave him all this money, blah, blah, blah. But then the fact that it was 50-50, the poll was 50, like just even like not knowing, some people obviously not knowing the giant contract Lawrence just got. The fact that people thought that was a legitimate question is all you need to know about Trevor Lawrence's play, is that it wasn't a clear joke to everybody. It is bad. And we are done with generational at this point. We're just trying to get Trevor Lawrence. Can you even be a mid-level NFL quarterback? So I said they'll be fun to watch, but that's the thing is like, okay, Brian Thomas with Evan Ingram back, kind of a little bit hurt there because the target share is going to go down a little bit, but it's like, now it's Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk isn't a thing anymore. And as you mentioned, ETN's banged up. So, okay, cool, Tank Bigsby. But Tank Bigsby, huge run, and then the same amount of yards on the next 7 carries combined. Like, it's all over the map. So they'll be fun. I guess, like, your question, if you took it as who do you feel best about, if you are a fan, I would actually agree with you as the Patriots.
Trevor Lawrence is going to end up somewhere with an actual good coach and be awesome at some point in his career. Like
Doug Peterson needs to be fired.
Sort of like what Sam Darnold is doing now, but Lawrence is better than Darnold, so it'd be even better than that.
Yeah. Again, I keep going back to I don't know because the argument before was it was Urban Meyer. Everybody wanted to apologize for what happened with Urban Meyer. With Doug Peterson, it doesn't seem to be better. I keep going back to watch Trevor Lawrence, the player. He still doesn't look comfortable. Like, and maybe he never gets past that in the NFL, but he doesn't look like Clemson comfortable. And I know Clemson and college and everything but there's a certain level of like, he's just making throws and he doesn't feel panicked he doesn't look like Daniel Jones in the pocket. It doesn't look like, oh my God, there's a half second of pressure. I need to do something. And because you watched him in college and he kind of sat, and maybe it's an offensive line issue, but he sits there and then he was running more in college also because he had that. It was basically Caleb Williams from yesterday. Now that Caleb Williams is starting to get a little bit more comfortable, it's like, oh, you know what? There's this giant lane in front of me. Like, I can actually think past my first and second read of panic, everything's in my face, and take off for a run 20 yards up the middle of the field. And I think until Lawrence looks comfortable, which again, maybe it never happens in the NFL, maybe the speed is just too much for him, he has to get comfortable. And he's not. He still is yet to be in the NFL.
More likely scenario. Deshaun Watson gets benched or Kevin Stefanski quits being head coach?
The third option, Stefanski gets fired and they blame it all on him.
It's very clear it's not his fault. He clearly doesn't want to. He doesn't want to play Deshaun Watson.
No, but it's 100% true. I tweeted out the GIF yesterday from Lord of the Rings. You have no power here. When it's like Stefanski wants to bench him, he has zero power. He is gonna take all the blame. Because that's what the Browns want to do. They don't want to make it about the fact that it's the worst contract. And honestly, this is going down as the worst contract in the history of any sport ever, 100%. Watson needs to be, he does, you know what I'm talking about? He does nothing good. Watson does nothing. Nothing. He can't even throw for 200 yards. And there's wide open passes. And then he hesitates and gets sacked. Like, he needs to go to the bench. But again, this team is not going to let that happen from the top, which means Stefanski's the scapegoat. He doesn't deserve to be. We're talking about 2-time Coach of the Year. He's going to be the scapegoat, and somebody's going to get the benefit of him as the head coach next year. Do that.
It's going to be
Stefanski on the Jaguars.
There we go. Problem solved. Stefanski to Jacksonville. Lawrence is good.
I forgot. I even mentioned that in a tweet yesterday. If I'm Stefanski, I'm proactively, he can get in trouble. I'm proactively calling up the Jaguars, calling up Khan and being like, hey, you're going to fire Doug Peterson, aren't you? I want out of here.
Can they just, I mean, if they're going to stick with a shitty coach anyway, just trade Peterson for Stefanski.
Can you do a coach trade? I love it.
You can trade coaches.
I know. For picks, though, can you trade them for coaches for coaches?
I don't know. Coach challenge trade? I'd be all over that. So, would you rather start Will Levis or Aiden O'Connell as your quarterback?
Will Levis?
It's still Levis, right?
Yeah, as stupid as it can be at times, it's that stupidity that it means you might get a big play out of it. Although they're going to get Calvin Ridley more involved, and they did. Too bad he didn't get a single one of his 8 targets caught.
That will be a nice swing back next week. Take the over on everything Calvin Ridley, because everyone's gonna be like, "Oh my God, he'll have 0 catches again," and his line will be 2.5 receptions. He'll have 7.
Yeah,
it's always how this stuff goes.
It was gonna be Oliver Hopkins. Yep.
So with Cleveland, there was an Amari Cooper probably 9-yard pass where he was wide open, and he wasn't even close. He just threw it so high and behind Cooper that he ended up dropping it. But remember Raul Mondesi?
Yeah.
And he used to take one hoppers off the right field fence and just throw a dart to third base. He probably had the best arm of anyone I can think of in the outfield ever.
Yeah, the freaking lasers that he threw.
He took less windup to throw it from the right field foul pole to third base than it takes Deshaun Watson to throw a 9-yard pass.
I was wondering where you were going with that. That's a really good like kind of like comparison to kind of talk about what the issue with Watson is.
Even to watch like Flacco. Flacco was throwing these like 30-yard like ding, just like flicking his wrist and it was going 30 yards.
Watson's who's the golfer where it hitches at the top and then comes back down?
Oh, Matthew Wolf.
Matthew Wolf? Or was it Furyk too back in the day?
Yeah, Furyk does it as well.
That's the one that's Deshaun Watson as a golfer is like that, and then okay, finally.
It's brutal, but I do have Tennessee last because they're just laughably bad.
Nah, if you want, I don't even care.
Yeah, all these.
I put the Patriots at the top of the tier, and then any of those other 4 teams, I don't care.
Makes sense to me. We'll see. We got 2 of these teams facing each other this week. London game, New England and Jacksonville. I kind of think Jacksonville might lose.
Don't forget, Germany also gets the Panthers and Giants.
At least that looks like more fun. Like Daniel Jones and Andy Dalton are at least somewhat exciting.
Maybe. What if it's Bryce Young at that point?
Oh, that's bad news. That's probably the last Andy Dalton week, if I was to guess.
That makes sense. Oh, hey, retire. Well, you can stay here. See you later.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's what they should do with Doug Peterson.
No, they're going to hide Doug Peterson's passport so he can't leave England and never come back.
That's what I'm saying. Like, find a way to just tell him that the jet takes off at 6 o'clock and then actually like leave at 4.
Yeah, just be like, hey, this was actually a retirement trip, a free expense one way to England. There you go, Doug. Enjoy. Follow Jake at All In Kid, the All In Podcast, as well for all your rankings needs, for your pickup needs. I'll be back with rankings in the newsletter on Wednesday, and plus all of the shows I got going on. You got anything else in between right now, podcast-wise, video-wise, article-wise? You got your pickups at midnight tonight?
Yeah, midnight Mondays, ranks midnight Tuesdays, All In Fantasy Podcast. Actually do it Tuesdays, Wednesdays for waivers and ranks, and then the Friday is like, hey, this is all the injury news you might need to know, and then Sunday night is like, hey, this is all the stuff you might not have seen during the games today.
Yeah. Okay. So go subscribe to that right now. All right. And follow Jake at theathletic.com as well. Follow me at the PME. Sub to the channel, smash the like, and code Mayo at Underdog right now to get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Okay? I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!